think she has to leave her. Sister Tanya Moore is first and foremost a child of God. I was born and raised, educated, and baptized in Augusta, Georgia. I have lived in the Atlanta, Riverdale area for over 30 years, and that is not me, her.
Yes.
In 1996, I met the love of my life, Richard Randy Moore. In 1998, we became Mr. and Mistress. I am a proud mother of 4 adult children and 7 beautiful grandchildren. I enjoy life every day and take no one for granted. God is my strength and my Redeemer. Give a hand for Sister Tanya Moore. I met Sister Tanya at the gym, the senior center in Riverdale, and she's a beautiful person. When I didn't know what to do on the treadmill and everything, she showed me what to do. She was she became a friend right at the beginning. So I thank God for Sister Moore, and she'll tell you about being married, and her husband has passed away, who I learned to love too. He was such a beautiful person.
Amen. Amen. Praise the Lord, everybody. Praise the Lord.
Praise the Lord.
Oh, God is good. God is good in spite of.
Amen.
In spite of.
Amen.
I'm so glad to see that we have at least 2 men in here. Now, I may not need this mic, but I'll hold on to it anyhow. I'm glad that Elna asked me to do this, because I told Elna this is not the kind of stuff that I do. I'm not one to speak publicly in front of anybody. But then I asked God to use me. And I know that if you ask God to move your feet or to order your steps, you got to be willing to move your feet. And so I'm moving my feet this morning. I bring you greetings from Greater Mount Pleasant Baptist Church in Hapeville, Georgia, where the Reverend Dr. James H. Pullen Sr. is my pastor, my preacher, and my leader. And I also brought with me my sister in Christ. That's my support system. When Elna asked me to do this, I just didn't know if I could. Pardon me if I get a little weepy. My eyes tend to drain or drip from time to time. I met my husband in 1996. We were friends, and I actually proposed to my husband, and he accepted. 1998, we became Mr. and Mrs. Oh, and oh, and oh. We have 4 grown children. He accepted my child, because I have 1 biological child. He accepted my child as his, and I accepted his as mine. And from that, we have 7 beautiful grandchildren. Coming from what you said, Sister Sade, when I met my husband, I had no idea that he would be my husband. It just so happened that where I met him, which was in a bowling alley, because we bowl league, and this particular night, and to show you how God puts stuff in place for you, my story leads to my son's father and I had been together over 18 years. If he had hit the lottery on the day that I was going to marry my husband, he'd have had to just take his money and keep it moving. But when I met my husband, I was going into the bowling center, and he was standing back at the counter because he was coming to see if he wanted to manage that particular bowling center. When I walked past him, he spoke to me and I spoke to him. And at that very moment, I knew that he would be the man that I would marry. Don't know how, because that was the last thing on my mind, is to marry. So I didn't want to marry anybody. All I wanted to do was get rid of the one I had, take my baby, and let it be he and I. But that wasn't God's plan. God had a totally different plan for me. But I knew at that moment that this would be the man that I would marry. In 1998, I actually proposed to him. I'm thinking, what am I thinking about? But again, it wasn't me. It was God. And so I proposed to him in February. We were married in August. We had a beautiful relationship. Now we had our bumps and we had our humps and all of that kind of stuff, but we had a beautiful relationship. My husband he was retired Air Force. He worked for the DOD. So he had traveled. I met him after he had retired out of the Air Force, so I didn't get the luxury of doing all of the traveling. But I got the luxury of loving someone unconditionally with everything in me. I loved him. And he took a job and we had to move to Mississippi. I'm thinking, I don't want to move to Mississippi. Ain't nothing in Mississippi for me because I'm used to being here and ain't nothing in Mississippi for me. But we moved to Mississippi for 4 years and he became an ordained minister while we were there. My life really changed. I mean, it really changed. But then I had to tell him, it's like, wait a minute, God called you, he didn't call me. Not knowing that God really did call me. I mean, he called me because I had to be a helpmeet to my husband. So God really did call me. And so we were there for 4 years. We did a lot of stuff while we were there. And the church that we joined there was a small church. And we did a lot of things there, but we did a lot of things together. And so we came back home and doing our thing, at church, we were, outgoing and we did a lot of stuff together. My story might not be all that exciting because Charday being a young person, I feel like I've been there, done that. I have postcards, and all this kind of stuff. But anyhow, coming to the current events for me, in 2014, I think it's when I met Elyon at the senior center. We were working out and whatnot, and my husband, very active, just super active and whatnot, started to feel a little poorly. I'm thinking, man, not you. Someone who is always, my husband ate, he was active, and I'm just so on the lazy side. Just super on the lazy side. And so he started to kind of feel a little poor, and I'm one to push a person to the doctor because most men won't go. And so it was when he would start to feel bad, I'm like, let's go. And so we ended up going to the doctor. It's like, okay, we get all of that stuff. And so in late November, he really, really started to feel bad. We ended up in Southern Regional's emergency room. We were there and he was like, the doctor was like, okay, well, we'll admit him. And he's like, no, we got Thanksgiving somewhere, so we can't be here. Okay, so we were there, it seemed like forever, and we leave. And we go through Thanksgiving, and he's still feeling poorly, but a little better. And we go through Christmas. January 15, 2015, we ended up going to Fayette County Hospital. But prior to that, we had gone to doctors. We went to the oncologist, we went to the nephrologist, we went to the radiologist, we went to the cardiologist and all of this. And finally, January 15th, my husband was admitted to the hospital. And in all of the testing that we had done, we found that he was diagnosed with what was called multiple myeloma. I don't know if any of you all have ever heard of that, but multiple myeloma is a cancer that affects the blood, your bone marrow, and whatnot. My husband was okay. We eventually got the cancer under control. I'm sorry. And we prayed. We prayed a lot. And so God was, well, you know, my husband told me, well, God has already spoken to me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, tell me. He said, no, I can't tell you. I said, okay. And so we ended up being in the hospital. And I say we, because I spent the same amount of time in the hospital that my husband did. My husband spent 55 days in 2 different hospitals. And out of the 55 days, I spent 53 of those days with my husband. And I wouldn't do it any other way, because I felt that my vows said to me, do this in sickness and in health. I stayed with my husband around the clock. My shower was a sink. My bed was a sofa. The grief that I experienced when my husband passed away was something that I could never, ever, ever describe. And I don't know how many ladies have lost their husbands, but it's a grief that you just cannot get your mind around. You cannot get your heart around. But it's something that you have to deal with. And the definition that I found with grief was an intense sorrow caused by the loss of a loved one, especially by death. The grief that I experienced, I thought, oh my God, how could you do this to me? How could you do this to me? Our relationship was awesome. My husband loved me unconditionally, and I had some faults, and so he loved me unconditionally. But I knew that when my husband got sick, there was nowhere I would have been, nowhere else I would have been. Nothing could have taken me away from my husband. And the only reason that I didn't spend the other 2 nights with my husband was because his children or his daughter said, they came into town and it was like, you go home, I'll stay with Daddy. And she did, and I was able to go home and finally rest, or so I thought. And you all have to pardon me because it appears that I may be rambling, but if you've ever lost anyone, it makes you that way. I mean, everything that you thought you had, it gets shuffled, and then eventually it'll come back to you. And this sister here with her husband, girl, love that man like no other, in spite of, because you know we all have some in spite of. So in spite of, love that man. I mean, because that's what God has put you there to do. Love him like no other. Because if I could change anything today, I would have my husband standing beside me. But he wouldn't come back, I don't believe, because of where he is. And all of the stuff that we are enduring here, I don't think he will come back.
Yeah, amen.
But I have a couple of scriptures for you all. For in much wisdom is much grief. And it's Ecclesiastes 1:18. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increases sorrow. And that's how I feel. Because when my husband got sick, Lord knows, had it been me, the flesh me, I would not have been at the hospital overnight. Like, I got to go lay in my own bed. I can't be up in no hospital. I got to go home. But that wasn't me. That was God. You know, that was the God in me, because it's like, no, because I mean, I'm telling you, I would have just been home watching TV, and I'd have gotten up the next morning and going back to the hospital. And you know, and that's how it would have gone. But that's the God, that was the God in me. Because I was kind of, not saying that I was out there, but I was me. I mean, I was just me, and it was like, no, God, I want to do this. I want to go home. But it wasn't. That was the God in me. And so, and with all of that, it has taught me to love fast, to love hard, and to just love a person for who they are. My husband had faults. I had faults. But I would not leave his side. I didn't want to leave his side. The nurses, they got used to me. You know, it's like, Miss Moore, you can go home. Oh, go home? Are you kidding me? I'm not leaving my, oh, well, he's in good hands. Yes, he's in God's hand. You all are good, but he's in God's hand. And so I stayed with my husband around the clock. And I wouldn't have done it differently. I would not have done it differently. And the other scripture that I have is Jeremiah 10:19. Woe is me for my hurt, my wound is grievous. But I said, truly, this is a grief that I must bear it. And it is a grief that we must bear, because at some point we're going to all have to cross that path.
Amen.
You know, whether it's us gone, or the spouse, or child, or we're going to all have to cross that path. And it doesn't matter how prepared you think you may be for it. You're not. You're not. You're just not. You know, you could know that that person is sick and think, well, eventually they're going to. You're not prepared for that. And you say, oh, but I know that they're going to pass. But you're not prepared for that. And so we have to actually get into the Word to help prepare for that. And some of the things people would say to me, because, you know, we don't know when we have people pass away, you don't know what to say. And some of the things people would say to me is, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. And guess what my response would be? So am I. Because no one, there is no one who is more sorry for the loss of a loved one than the person that lost that loved one. And so I had to make a conscious effort to say to people when I hear other folks say, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. I tried to make a conscious notion to say to them, I'm so sorry for your heartache and pain. Because to hear someone say, oh, I'm sorry for your loss, I really kind of wanted to start punching people in the throat. Because it was just, you don't understand. You can't say, you know, to say, I'm sorry for your loss. And because it's a thing that we've gone through forever. That's what we've always said to people. I'm sorry for your loss. But if you sit and think about it, there's no one more sorry for the loss of a loved one than the person that lost that loved one. And so to turn that around and say, I'm sorry for your heartache and your pain, they get it. And a lot of people get, I'm sorry for your loss. But that just kind of started to get to me because I met this lady and she said that she would tell people, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. And she said they were empty words to her. And they are empty words to a lot of people that has never really lost anyone. They're just empty words. Oh, I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry for your loss. Yeah, me too. And I tell people that I am as well, because I am. And so she said these were empty words to her until she lost her husband.
Okay.
And then she said, then she started to realize that, oh, now I got what people were saying. I'm sorry for your loss. And we have to kind of change those things because it's something that we have had going with us forever, because that's all we know to say. That's all we know to say is that I'm so sorry for your loss. But the person that lost that person, you have no idea. I mean, you just have no idea. And so, again, when my husband passed, I thought my world was just ending. But it wasn't. It was beginning more in God because He was preparing me for something. I don't know what yet, but He was preparing me for something. And so I prayed, I cried, I still cry. And it's been over a year. I still cry. because my husband was a good man. We had a great relationship. He was awesome. And it broke my heart when he passed away, because I had no idea what I would do, where I would go, how I was going to survive. But God had stepped in, or God was always there, but he really stepped in and said, you know what, I got you. I got you. You know, lean on me, lean not into your own understanding. And he said, you know, it's like, I got you. So all of the sleepless nights I've had, all of the tears, God is wiping those tears away, and he's preparing me for something else. I have no idea. I have no idea. But whatever it is, I want to be ready for it. And so with the grief, and you guys have to just pardon me, because grief is not really something that everybody want to talk about. As a matter of fact, that anybody want to talk about. But I learned that with grief, there are 5 stages of grief. And the first stage, and we don't get these stages in this particular order, but there are 5 stages of grief. And the first stage is called denial. And this is a stage when our mind attempts to help you accept the fact that a loved one has died. Denial is a self-defense mechanism that most grieving people experience. You can recognize this stage by hearing grieving people make statements like, "This seems so unreal. I still look for him or her to come through the door. He or she has always been around and I can't believe it's gone." And the second stage is anger, the anger turned outward stage. Sometimes you can become angry with the doctor or the hospital because you don't believe they did all that they could do. This can be a time when anger really becomes intense. Sometimes family members will become embroiled in confusion and angry with each other. Yes. And Lord knows I had that. I never thought my in-laws would turn against me like they did, but they did. And I prayed them right on the way. And the next stage in anger, is anger turned inward. Angry at yourself. This is when you begin to blame yourself for not having done things you promised you would do, and death came before you fulfilled your promise. Others feel, I was not there like I should have been, or someone may feel angry because they were not at the bedside of their loved ones when their loved ones died. That could happen. And a lot of people go through that, and we have to get past that stage. The third stage is, the fourth stage is anger acceptance. When a person is willing to accept the fact that their loved one is now gone, this stage is when people allow themselves to feel the pain without anger or denial. This is the stage when denial, anger, and other sentiments associated with the loss begin to truly heal. You accept it, and we have to move on. Because God didn't mean for us to just stay in one spot. God didn't mean for us to grieve for 30 years, for 15 years. God didn't mean for us to do that. He meant for us is you go through your grieving period, because no one knows how long a person should grieve. No one can put you have 90 days to grieve and then you move on. You have 60 days or you have a year to move on. No one can put a time limit on your grief, because everybody grieves differently. Some people, it may take them 30 days to get past wherever. Some people, it may take them 2 years. But God didn't mean for us to just grieve continuously. He wants you, you go through your grieving period and you move on. Life goes on. And I am learning that life goes on. Because my bills didn't stop coming when my husband passed. Matter of fact, they just got even more. But life goes on, so you have to keep it moving. God wants you to keep it moving. Because He didn't mean for us to be sad always. He just didn't mean for us to be sad always. And no matter how much you love your loved one, once they depart from us, He just didn't mean for us to just continuously be sad. Amen. It's like you have to rejoice and celebrate their life, because they wouldn't want you to be sad. They wouldn't want you sitting around, whoa, it's me. They wouldn't want that. And the last stage, stage 5, is resolution. This is the stage when grieving family members decide he or she is gone and they will cherish the memories of their loved one. Family members begin to realize the fact that life must go on. This begins the true period of healing. And it does. It does. When we start to move on and when we could talk about the grief, the more you talk about the grief, the more you start to heal. Because when you hold it inside, you're only creating more problems for yourself. But when you start to talk about it, you actually start to heal. And whenever I got a chance to talk to someone about my husband's passing, it helped, it started to bring my level down. It gradually brings my level down to where I'm not so intense about the pain, the hurt, the heartache. So it was bringing my level down. And so we have to do that. 3 of the ways to grieve out of the pain are cry it out. God knows I cried it out, and I'm still crying it out. And it's okay because, see, that's why God gave us tear ducts to cry. He didn't say hold everything in. God gave us tear ducts to cry. So cry it out. Start talking to relatives and finally talk about the fun things your loved ones used to do. And I do. My husband did some of the wackiest things, and I laugh about it because he always got on that one right there. He would just, he would tell people, oh, you take your wallet. When he'd hug her, it's like, you watch her because she'd steal your wallet. And it would embarrass her, but he was just, so he always did some quirky stuff, and we laugh about that. And that helps me to get past some of the pain as well. And then receive counsel from a grief counselor. Don't just sit around and just go into that darkness, because sometimes we go into darkness and it's real hard to find your way out of darkness. So don't go into darkness. And if you know of anyone that is going through, don't let them go into the darkness, because it's real hard to come out of darkness, because depression is a horrible, horrible monster. It will enclose you, and then you fight to get out. And sometimes for some people it's difficult to come out of that. So don't allow that person, if you see them going in that direction, grab hold tight to pull them out of that. Because once we get in, it's real hard to come out. Oh. These ways will bring healing more quickly. Even though no 2 people grieve alike, there is no certain date to end the grief period. Generally, 6 months to a year is a safe amount of time to grieve properly. When there is a sudden death, there's great shock. It can bring about complicated grief. When death is expected, loved ones will already have done what is called anticipatory grief. Anticipatory grief takes place before the actual death. When death is totally unexpected, the reaction could be more intense. If a person seems to not be moving along in the grieving process, counseling should be sought so that the grieving person does not do permanent damage to themselves. And that's exactly what I was saying. It's like, don't allow that to happen. We don't know what to say to a person who's lost someone. We struggle for words to say to a person. And sometimes you just have to go and embrace them. You don't always have to say anything. You can walk up to a person that you know has gone through something and just embrace them. And that way, and they'll know, you know. Because a heart knows, spirit knows. And so we have to do what we can do, but we know that grief is something that we will all experience. And if you haven't experienced, God bless you, because you're a good one. But grief is something that we will all experience. We just deal with it on different levels.
Amen.
And we have to help those that we know that are grieving. We have to help those to get past it, because I have a pretty good support system, Because there are still days that I can just barely get out of bed. And then there are days when I can't wait to get out of bed. But I have a great support system because people are always, they'll call you, all right, you good? Sometimes I have to tell them, I just, no, I'm not. This is not a good day. And so when you go through that, it's like, be honest. Be honest. Are you, how you doing? I'm not doing good today. This ain't the day, And they understand that. And if they can't understand that, then that's on them. But I had to start to learn to be honest with myself. It's like, it's not a good day. And one of the other things that we've grown up with, it's saying to people, oh, he or she is in a better place. Personally, I beg to differ. I really do. Because I feel a better place would be standing by my side. So we all there to know, don't tell me that. Because I feel that a better place would have been my husband standing by my side. And so we have to kind of learn how to not say things that we have been conditioned to say to people. It's like, oh, don't tell me that. And oh, time will heal. No, it does not.
That's good. Amen.
No, it does not. Time does not heal. Time will heal that scratch I got on my hand. Yes, it will. Time to me does not heal a broken heart. My father died over 30 years ago. I still hurt for that. Time does not heal that. Time has, however, allowed me to grow into the feeling and the understanding of that hurt and that pain. So we have to kind of like start changing some things. At least I did, because of the experience that I went through, to share it with someone else in a different light, because we are conditioned to do certain things. But the pain is real. It doesn't go away. It just kind of lays down for a little while, and then something may bring it up. And so, forgive me for my weepiness. My eyes sometimes have a tendency, I tell them, they leak from time to time. So, my grief, I'm growing through. And I hope that if you have anyone that's in a similar situation, that you will also help them to grow through theirs. But young lady, sir, love each other like there's no tomorrow. Because all of those little things that we have a tendency to kind of get on each other's nerves about, it ain't worth it.
That's right.
I mean, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. So get past it, keep it moving, and love like you have never loved before. And the last thing I'll leave you all with is, my cousin said to me, where there's great love, there is great grief. Where there's great love, there's great sorrow. Thank you for listening.